I'm doing like an Oxford crew this time. I berated them aggressively for it too, but sadly no
I
dice.
know. Are you guys going to go to the next one? The next big one?
They're planning to. Yeah. Yeah. We're doing the Netherlands is doing a thing in March, like March 18. It's like 8-ish countries are going to be there. We're going to that one.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be super easy. It's like Poland, Germany, Netherlands, like classic pushover teams. We're going to do fine.
Belgium United.
Yeah.
Belgium United.
The classic mercenary
Classic
team.
pushover team.
We came to WC last year with such little prep. I think we're going to do a lot better this time. We'll see how it goes.
So you're saying that you've done any?
What? Yeah, we have done any prep this time. It's incredible how much more any prep will help you in a team event.
Who would have thought? So, as you can tell by the off-topic that started in the first 40 minutes, it's another episode of Enter the Matrix, boys. This time we're talking about the International Team Tournament. That's how Zach calls it, I think. And I've grabbed 3 captains, those poor souls who will have to deal with me. And except Pumba, I'm not allowed to deal with Pumba. For
which is ridiculous, by the way. And
you would not want me as a ref at your tables anyway. So
I know. I really wouldn't.
So you're
you don't
just
know shit
saved.
about rules.
So you're just saved at this point. So yeah, this time we're just gonna talk about ITT, the preparation, what comes in from like different teams. We have 3 players that I could say are like kind of WTC players. Mitch, you were at WTC. Pumba, you kind of were at WTC as well. Although you were more with your body, less with your soul, looking at the list you played.
The soul was left in Poland, yes.
And David, you're trying to gather the Kiwis to actually get their asses over here, which I can imagine is a hard task.
It's a hard task, but we have almost 8 people confirmed for this year, so we're going to be bringing the heat, hopefully, you know. But we're there to have a good time as well.
Yeah, that's always great to hear. So what I wanted to talk mostly is about your whole preparation, what's happening, like how did you gather your team, what's your like main approach to actually going to like a team tournament in the whole UKTC setting, as you are like UKTC regulars, like either as a ref or as a player, how much it changes your approach and what you do compared to what you do usually when you travel to those single events. So as we kind of already alluded at the very beginning of the off-topic that we had 2 minutes ago, we can start with Mitch. You just mentioned that Team Iceland is not coming. What happened and how did you end up with your team? What's going on?
Yeah, I didn't realize we were recording when we were, so it's a good start to the show. Yeah, so unfortunately, Team Iceland was unable to put this one together. It just didn't work out for too many schedules, I believe. There's also the big Iceland GTs fairly soon, and I think that was also putting downward pressure on travel. So sadly, couldn't make this one work. So instead, I collected a bunch of friends that I've kind of made sort of from the local Oxford group, but actually most of those friendships were made from the UKTC scene. So like one guy's from my local club, John. He was like a consistent 4-1 player with like Death Watch last season. So he likes playing weird off meta stuff. He's pretty good at it. So of course we just gave him Iron Hands and said, go kill people for this time. Because it's like Marines. He's going to be the one that scores the points.
I remember funny story. We got the question whether Death Watch loses their combat doctrine if they take knights, because it's actually better for them to be able to choose
That question came from John. Yeah, that's where that came from.
Wait, so
and then I stole the Helverins anyway.
Before we go any further, can you lose it if you bring in knights or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So wait, DW is great at writing rules, apparently.
The normal doctrines, like the normal permanent devastator doctrine, if you bring in knights, do they? Or you just lose everything?
No, you lose the super doctrine.
You lose the super doctrine because the super doctrine
except Dark Angels,
because reasons. But
yeah, the one has an Agents of the Imperium exemption, the other does not.
Exactly.
Which is actually better for Death Watch, because then they can stay in Devastator and they can take their free 15 from Codex Warfare. They don't have to hop around, which is
that is correct.
Certainly,
and
rules.
I hate it so much.
And then but to finish out the question, the other 3 guys are just friends that I met on the UKTC scene. So Doug and Matt Tabor, who are friends that I've met at many of these tournaments, and you kind of like build up a crew of people that you get familiar with, you go get lunch with, and we've just been doing that for a while. So they're really cool. They're coming as well. And then finally, the fifth player, Tom, is actually just made the Scottish WTC team this year. It was kind of an unknown who was going to get it, and then he was like very emotionally the 8th one pick. So he was like super proud that he got that thing. And actually, we met him because we met in the finals of the Friday night doubles event. John and I were playing a really stupid 6 Armiger 3 Immolator list because that's what you can do in like team doubles. And we met at the finals and we beat their Blood Angels list, which was literally just a 2,000 point Blood Angels list cut into 2 patrols. Turns out even 3 Pench units beats Blood Angels, at least at that event. And like, we bonded over the table. And so, Tom made the team too. So for me, it's very much a go to big events, make friends, and then you can stitch teams together fairly easily if you want to.
Yeah. And the tickets for this event, I think, sold like hotcakes as well. So unless you got a ticket
yes, they did.
4 months ago, like you were not getting a ticket after that.
You weren't at first, right, David? From what I recall, you guys.
Yes. So like, so I wasn't even in the team. So I played for Team Dice Down, and we're like a team of like, you could best describe us as
average players.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have that many accolades.
Yeah.
But, myself and Vic BJ obviously were the most active players last year, and then a lot of people, kind of on the cooler. So yeah, we had original team, and I just said, because I knew I was going to be playing Vegas, and then potentially Bournemouth, and then which I didn't end up playing, but then I went, okay, because I'm not going to play Bournemouth, I'll play the ITT because someone dropped. I knew someone would eventually drop anyway, so it wasn't too bad. Yeah, so we've got we're actually running a 4+1. So we've got myself, Vic VJ, Boris Mitchev, who is the co-founder of Bad Moon Cafe, who like multiple LBO is like a super good player, but he's like not super active. So that's an interesting one. And then
he was in the finals of last Leicester, from what I remember.
Certainly was. Yeah,
he also was playing the last ITT, from what I remember.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, just playing Drakari, like made it to the finals at Leicester playing Drakari because he's like just played that for like such a long time. He's the type of person that if you give him like 10, 15 games and like have people that are active at the high level, bring him up to speed. He's a person that will just like come crunch it. So great guy. James Bessie or Jim Bessie, who is our lovable Drakari player for this one. He's such a good friend of ours as well. He's like the nicest guy too. And then we've actually got Brian Sepp playing for us. So originally we had another player, but it was kind of shaky whether or not he could play. Alex Petford, who is another strong player, an ex-Team England player. So yeah, Brian and I were chatting in Vegas, and he said, "Oh, if you've ever got a spot for the ITT for your team, like just let me know." And I was like, "Yeah, of course, man." And we had it come up. So yeah, obviously Brian is a really good player as well. So Brian joined the team, and I said, "Right, Brian, how do you like Iron Hands?"
I see Pumba is scared.
I am, because there might be a different chat which I am involved in which Brian is at, where I literally told him the list I was bringing, and it was today because I had no idea he was coming to ITT.
Look, it's absolutely fine. Brian doesn't share anything like that. So the best part about like people that play with is that well, obviously, like people that play at this level 2 are kind of involved in a couple of different teams and national teams and stuff like that as well. So, Brian, I don't know what you're playing, Pumba, but Brian for sure, hand on my heart, hasn't said anything as well. So we're a stand-up bunch, and we're already locked.
I'm fine.
Yeah,
I'm fine.
Speaking of teams, Pumba, who are you bringing across from Poland? Because I'm sure that obviously you guys have one of the scarier teams.
Are you bringing actually a mini WTC team to ITT? Is that what that is?
5 WTC players?
I mean, I have 4 people from the last WTC team, and one of our new prospects who just smashed the last season of our league. Like he came first.
I think
like
every single tournament he attended, he won with Harlequins. Every single one.
I'm pretty much that's what's happened. Basically smashed the league, and he's one of the prospects to the current team. One of the strongest candidates. So yes, you might say we are bringing the mini WTC team to roll around, especially that I'm one of the team selectors for this year, as well as one Mason is. So he's coming with me as well. So we are taking this opportunity, and every other international event pre-WTC is gonna be basically preparation for WTC for us as well. What's interesting, especially for this tournament for us, because we are so used to WTC rules, WTC terrain and stuff, we are treating this as an opportunity to learn a completely new system, new terrain stuff, new rules basically, because WTC, let's be honest, is completely different rule sets from what ITT uses. So it's also a valuable experience in how quickly we can actually adapt to a completely new system, as we know for WTC, the 10th will be coming around, and we will need to prep for that instantaneously, basically. So it's a good stress test for the ability to team to adapt. So that's what's going on.
I think
in a way, this is like that also, in that we just had Arcs of Omen. The meta is not settled, and you're already being thrown into a team tournament. So you're also making team comps with very low information, right? Which has been the fun for us, I think.
Yeah.
That is correct. The time is ripe for people like me, for the team selectors, team captains, stuff like this, to stress test your players, to stress test your candidates for the team, to figure out where you are lacking, what needs to be fixed and stuff, so you are actually prepped for the main WTC event.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, it's such an exciting part of the time to play a tournament where the meta is so unsolved. Like, we've had a couple of tournaments, but that doesn't necessarily reflect on what we know will apply to the UKTC terrain. And I was just looking to the terrain mission pack today. Like, all the tables are just set as well. Like, I know last year they had indents tables, which was rather poor rules writing, created some rather interesting conundrums there. But they're all just set tables now. And there is a new table as well. There's a new table layout, which is it's an interesting table layout to say the least. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff up in the air, and I don't think anyone has got it solved. I'll certainly say that we certainly don't feel like we've got it solved at all. And I don't know, Pumba and Mitch, you think the same way, but like we're just like, I think this will be good.
The strategy that we took for this was like, let's take all comers ish list that we have like a lot of experience with, because that's probably what we'll do best at. So like one of our players is bringing Grey Knights because he just has a ton of Grey Knights reps, and maybe they're somewhere in A, maybe they're top of B tier. I don't know, but he's really good at them. So he'll outperform what Grey Knights probably will do on average across the meta. So we thought that was more correct than trying to meta hop on fairly short notice. So, and I'm doing the same. I'm still playing my sisters, despite everyone saying they're trash now. We'll see.
I think sisters are really good in five, super viable in eights, very viable in eights, and if you've got a good player on them, can go in fives too. Especially with one of the boards being extremely dense, they will be absolutely phenomenal on that terrain. And the secondaries are still really strong as well. So I think they're a good all-round list to hit. To have in the team for sure, especially if you've got someone good on them as well. You got a lot of player expression, I think, for sisters too.
That's one of the armies that's way better in 20-0 than in win-draw lose.
Yes,
that is the case.
I can lose by 10 to anybody, which is sometimes the job you have to do.
Yeah. They lose by 10 to Iron Hands, right? Or Dark Angels. Like, okay, cool.
I played Jokic's Iron Hands earlier this week on TTS, and he's one of the best players. He's one of the best players in Team Iceland, top 100 in the world, playing full Iron Hands. I played a dumb Valorous Heart 30 Sacrosanct list, had never tried it into before, and YOLO'd all 30 sacks at him, top of turn 1, and I lost by 8. I thought that was pretty fine for an outcome. Yeah.
Sounds like sisters.
I mean, it does not at all. Normally, you don't see them shove 30 models into the middle of the board and say, "Can you kill it?" But he could. It just took a little while.
2 up and cover. Yeah. And Pumba, were you guys feeling comfortable? Because obviously, I think it's fair to say, like, you've got the most experience out of probably anyone here around doing captaincies and tests. Like, you guys are always scrimming online. Like, were you feeling like, oh, it was pretty obvious what the top lists to bring were, or?
Definitely not. Like, I wouldn't say we knew right away what the top lists were. Like, as everybody, especially after the arcs hit, we had guesses and estimations, and the job was to actually figure them out and back them up by actual testing. So I would say what I'm doing basically now is what I am expecting to do at the actual WTC. or what I've done for any Polish team event, especially 5v5s, as I have a lot of experience captaining my own local team in that. So figuring out the answers for the potential like meta. So I'm trying to assess what the meta is going to be like, what I'm expecting people to bring in the biggest quantities, and having answers for that more than like figuring what definitely is the best 5 armies to bring. So I need answers to the meta that I'm approaching instead of just being the meta.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think Mitch and I would probably, because we're not as team orientated in that, I think especially in fives as well, like we would probably tend to gravitate towards more rounded lists instead of like, teched and skewed. So like, I mean, I'll say for our team, most of our lists are quite well rounded. When we're playing armies that have options to skew either way, and I think we've probably opted for more rounded stuff. Do you think that's better in fives or like eights? And what's the difference there? Would you bring a super skew list, for example, in fives or?
I would add one thing before Pumba answers. I think all of the things that we talk about are dictated by the fact that all of the tables have the same layout.
Yeah,
This
I
is
was going to
exactly
say
what
there's
I
a
was
few
going to say.
huge differences. Yeah.
So yeah, to answer your question, this tournament is widely different to any other 5v5 event I've done, because in here every single table is going to be the same. And that also means bringing like a huge gunline skill list might not work.
Yeah, for sure.
The other really big difference is there's no ties. So if you win 51-49 as a team, that's a win, not a draw, which also I think changes the calculus fairly significantly.
So the combination of the every table is the same and the scoring system with no draws means this definitely favors all-rounder lists instead of skew lists. But it is not out there to like. I think there's still might be some skew lists that will absolutely do amazing in this.
Like,
this
there are
scenario.
things to still anticipate. Like, you can imagine most of the top teams will bring some version of guard, and you need to have something prepared for that. And I don't think we are showing any secrets, expecting that some teams might first defend with guard. And what do you do with it? Like, what's your answer? You need to kind of know it before you even attend the event.
I think so I'm playing guard for our team, and that's the reason why I
How can you live with yourself? Do you sleep at night?
I can go deep on guard if you want, and I think a lot of people will probably be very surprised by what I say. But before I go into that, that's why I asked Pumba the question. I was like, do you think it's more like skew or well-rounded? Because guard is one of those things where, maybe you can bring 9 Russes and outflank, 6 of them and or whatever, right? Or you could bring like full indirect or something like that. Or you could bring like a bunch of infantry or something. But I think I would agree, like we kind of came to the same conclusion of it. Like we'd rather just play well-rounded lists. But I think this also comes into it. I think my team or for Team Dice Down, we're definitely not one of the top teams at the event. I don't say. I think we're maybe third at the event potentially. I think Poland, you guys, and Team England have got the resources and the player base to draw on that's like significantly larger than we do. For example, like we have Vic, myself, and Brian, who will comfortably go to any army. We'll be like, okay, we think the top 3 are like this. Okay, boom, whatever. Like we'll get it together, play it, rip it out. And then we've got Boris and Jim that are pretty much set on playing like what they want. And I don't know if they would necessarily be armies that would be in the top 8 list, but like we're such good friends and we want to play the event to have a good time as well. So it's kind of, there's pragmatic implications for what the list we're bringing as well, in a certain sense. So I feel like you guys in Team England, Pumba, would probably don't have to work with things like that. Is it kind of true or?
More or less. I think the thing that always happens, even when building a team for 5v5 or 8v8, to be honest, or even WTC, is you will have faction specialists. And if you want to bring them, if they are someone that you want to work with, they are kind of set on the faction. But we have one of those actually in our team. And
you might know him, David.
You might know that you have played the guy already, so it's not a big secret, and he's already in BCP. So I'm not revealing too much over here. Yeah, but he's that type of guy that if you give him a task to solve with that particular army, he will solve it. Like there's
Yeah.
no way he won't.
Yeah.
Like I have so much trust that he is able to pull exactly the scores that he needs to, where like if he has the exact job to do, that I have no problem bringing that particular army that he's only comfortable with, for example,
Yeah.
which is a huge value. And we have, of course, some people that will just army hop whatever. I'm pretty much comfortable army hopping. We have Myson who will play pretty much anything as long as it's absolutely busted.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, like I can play literally almost anything. I wouldn't play a straight guideline, I guess, but that's it.
Or Dev Guard.
Or Death Guard. Fuck Death Guard. God, I hate that army.
I wouldn't play this guy.
Um,
Oh my god.
That's the thing.
I don't because they're bad, right?
How do you like your short, stumpy legs that move only 5 inches, man?
Yeah. I
Like,
guess
that sounds not fun.
I just cannot deal with an army that gets beaten by drawing a 17 inches out of your measuring tape.
that
Like,
that is one of my
that's
favorite
just-
things in 40k when you roll up to the table against a Death Guard player and you're kind of trying to suss each other out, like how good is my opponent, how hard of a time did he give me, and the way their face falls when I measure 17.1 inches,
17
lines, they're like,
inches.
oh crap, he's one of them. He knows what to do.
Like,
Unlucky,
playing
man.
an
Go next.
army that loses to a measure tape isn't a good take.
That's so
That
good.
is.
Look, you got to disrespect them more than that. You just be like 17.1, then be like, nah, I'll be within 17. And just like, you're not going to make a 12 anyway. Who cares?
Here's the
And
worst
they're
part.
just like, okay.
I have like a pregame spiel where I ask a bunch of questions, even if I know it. I just want to make sure I don't like screw it up and forget when I'm at the table. It's game 3 on day 1. Like you don't want to make a mistake. And I'll ask the question just to check. Do you have any advance in charge? No. Do you have any fall back in charge? No. Do you have any way to move more than your move distance? Look, buddy, I played Death Guard. We just lay off me for a minute. I'm like, sorry. It's just I'm autopilot. I forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So back to the topic, it's kind of push and shove. It's both, even for us. Like the Team Poland is regarded in the major TC community, especially like as a very good team.
Mhm.
But we actually don't have that many players. Our player base is quite small comparatively. Like if you compare it to Germany, USA, France, for example, has like billions of
UK.
players. UK is huge, right? So as a 40k community, we are still quite a small community. We are just hyper focused, is what's happening.
Yeah,
which is a huge advantage. You know, when
I
people
can-
no, go for it, Mitch. Go for it, Mitch.
I was going to say, I can empathize with this exactly. You're talking to Mitch Beard, who plays for Team Iceland, because they also struggle to find eight local players. I mean, obviously, I'm going to play my heart out, and I'd be there as a support if I wasn't playing. But I mean, same problem. The Icelandic national team draws from the game store in Reykjavik. It's called Nexus, and there's like 20 odd, 30 odd people who will attend their GTs or their really big RTTs. Like that's the community. Like you're going to pick the top 5 to 8 of this 25 people. And that is not a big pool to select from. Now, happily, they have Heather and Jokut, who are both top 100 world players. That's a great anchor, but you've got to fill up the rest of the roster too. And that's where like, you know, the discipline and the focus and the teamwork and the camaraderie and the planning, I think can make them outperform like the top 8 random players in the US, for example.
Yep. I can also like empathize with this because I have been how I've actually become a selector for the national team. I think mainly is I've built a team of my local players, just literally my local game store people that just wanted to play in a team and improve and go to events. And even with a pool of like 20, 16 people, maybe we managed to snatch out like Polish team championship last year. So actual skill can be developed, especially in this edition, I think. And if you will have focus and have a opportunity to like invest time and will to invest time and practice the game, I think it's worth even more now than ever before in 40k.
Are you talking in general in 40k, or just because we're in such an unsettled time?
In general. Like
Okay.
especially I feel like the whole 9th edition is the edition of repetition and the edition of practice.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I would agree.
knowledge about the game, knowledge about the rules, and practice.
Yeah,
I mean,
the game's
TTS, right?
incredibly complicated.
Before TTS, there was no way you could do anything like what you can do today. Now the sky's the limit. You want to play 15 games a week? There's literally nothing stopping you from doing it against 15 top players in the world, right? That's incredible.
Like I'm gonna be honest, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, nobody in Poland knew me. Like
We
I
played
just
first in like November before Cyberpunk released.
basically, so that's what, like 21, November 21, I'm guessing.
Or 20. Yeah.
Yeah, and just nobody knew half of the national team that went to last year's WTC. And that's all because TTS was possible and practice and actually playing good players was possible. So that's how much the 40k changed right now.
I want to pick up on something you said before, Pumba. You're talking about kind of faction specialists. Do you think it's more important to have a faction specialist in a 5s team or more important in an 8s team? Or am I over exaggerating the difference between 5s and 8s as well?
It's a huge difference. It is a huge difference that's more depending on the meta. I think the more meta is stale and there's a clear-cut winner, the more interesting 8-mans are compared to 5-mans. And but in the same case, when you have a 5-mans, when you have a meta that, let's imagine you have 5 really dominant armies. I think there was one point where you had Custodes, Tau, Stampede, and Harleys. You had 4 really good armies. What did you bring as 5th? Like, there wasn't really a good choice. So it's dependent on the meta, I think, by a lot.
But at the moment, there's 2 clear top dogs in Iron Hands and Guard, and then there's a lot of other stuff that's good, right? So I don't think we're going to necessarily have that problem, at least at ITT.
Interesting. Yeah,
I'm killed.
My confidence level in terms of what the best army is probably the lowest it's ever been, I think, at the moment.
I agree.
It's GSC, boys. GSC. No one knows how to play against them.
Okay, I agree. It's GSC. Actually, after he said that.
I got to play Meissen a couple weeks ago in an Iceland versus Poland scrim, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it was one of the 2 worst beatings of my entire 40k career. And the other one was to Jack Harpster on a light board at WTC when he was on Tau. I learned things that day from Meissen. I learned so many things.
GSC is kind of fun right now, yeah. So back to the, but actually, David, you have asked a real difficult question for me to answer. I think, like, if I had to choose between faction specialists and someone who is entirely universal, it's very dependent on like when the actual tournament is happening, right? As we've discussed, because right now, the more like if you can army hop easily right now in a time when the meta is changing, it's crucial. And it's going to be the same for WTC and 10th edition. And if you are prepping for an event like in a month, for example, after arcs is kind of figured out, I think the faction specialists become more valuable.
If you reformulate the question, like, I would say if I had a choice as a team captain to have 8 faction specialists or 8 universal players, I will always go for universal players.
I agree.
But if it was a question, if I have 8-man team, can I have 2 faction specialists? Then hell yes, I can do that.
Okay,
because
so
you can then build the team kind of around those 2 armies being set in the team, but it's not the freedom that you would actually like as a captain, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting you said that, because I'm coming at with the almost exact opposite perspective, which is that if we're going to go into WTC with a brand new rule set like a month out, which means the meta will be effectively completely unknown, I would rather have a player who's deeply comfortable and has history with their factions. They can like adapt through that and outperform on limited like experience with the new rule set, but a lot of prior experience to draw from, rather than the opposite. The way that we're doing it for Iceland is, for all the candidates, the team's not been selected yet. Everyone has their main army that they're going to put the most reps into, and then a secondary backup army in case their main army gets dumpstered between now and August. And everyone's expected to be able to pivot over to their backup, but not really much beyond that, just because we know raw reps is going to matter. So, unfortunately, I have to learn GSC along the way,
Hey, it's a
just
good
in
learn.
case my sisters don't make the cut. I'm surprised how different your perspective on this is. Actually, it's very
Coming
interesting.
from experience, I will intercept this, Pumba. Sorry. Coming from experience and like the WTCs, I think it was 2013 and 2017 after edition changes. So edition after when 6th turned to 7 and 7th turned to 8th. I don't think that knowledge and reps from previous edition mattered in those editions.
Interesting.
Like the change was too big, and the scoring system changed so much, and the like very basic mechanics of the game, that it wasn't the reps that matter. It was the player who and how quickly they learned actually.
Fascinating.
So
This is very I completely understand your take, and I also know that Liam Hackett has the exact same position on this as you. Australians are full on faction specialism, and they have been for this last WTC, and they have won with that approach. But we had the exact opposite approach and took second. So I think it's very team dependent. I think it's so because they've said multiple times, Liam's have said multiple times, probably on this show as well, that they just want a person that they can just. You have that army. If I can trust your scores with that army, we will be fine, and it clearly worked.
If you look at some of their lists, I mean, they show the kind of radical innovation that only a deep understanding of a faction would deliver, like the Necron list that brought like all of those giant barges. If anyone paid attention to their sisters list, I certainly did. It had a Triumph of St. Catherine, which no one has seen in all of 9th edition, and 9 trade pieces. Just said, I'm just going to go 12 inches every single charge. Like, there's something to that, right? No normal human would dream up that kind of a list. So I definitely see your point.
That is absolutely the case. It was the same with Eric. Like Eric literally born a new archetype of GSC at WTC, and it still works to this day.
and now everyone plays Wardens, so there's something about that.
And like faction specialism and making just interesting out there lists has huge value, but it's all very dependent. Like I sincerely believe that with enough time, if you had infinite time, basically, you would be able to very much solve their lists as well. The problem is you don't have time to solve their lists. You will never have time to solve those very specific lists. And because of that, they worked so well. And faction specialisms give you that ability to build those lists. It is absolutely the case.
Okay, Pumba, give me some advice here. So, I feel like in fives, I'm pretty good on the Matrix. I've been doing a few more online team events. I've been doing a few more team events here and there. The Matrix, I think, is something I'm good at. But I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I just see what my team has written down, and I'm like, that's not the score. And I just before the Matrix, I'll just go, tell me what you don't want to play against. And they'll go like, I don't want to play against this. I don't want to play against this. And I'll be like, cool. Remind me when we're doing the pairings and the thing. Tap me on the shoulder, say, okay, remember, like this. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I just wrap it all up in my brain and then just do the pairings without any 12-8, 14-6, whatever, like 10-10. Do you think that's a viable approach? Like, I think using the Matrix is better, obviously, but if you're a team coming to this event, and you don't have the time and preparation to do Matrix, or you haven't got the experience, what would be your advice to someone, given that I could also be in that crowd?
Ooh, that's a hard thing to do, I think.
I don't think it's that hard. I think what you said about looking for a way to dodge your worst matchups, because people usually don't know how to evaluate win draw loses into 20-0 scoring, which is completely fine if you don't have experience with that, because people will play differently. But from your previous win draw lose games, you can tell when you got fucked.
Yeah.
And you can dodge that.
Yes. And like But then the problem that might occur is 4 people or 5 people telling you, bro, I don't want to play that.
No one wants to play guard. Surprise.
Yeah, so you
And
find the
and
one who doesn't have any great
and then
matchups, and they go under
3
the
of
bus.
them
Yeah,
and then 3 of them don't want to play another thing. And then you need to figure out the optimal way to do that, right? You might not have an answer for something. That is fine. That sometimes happens. Now you need to know which of your armies will get thrown under the bus, and you will only know that if you have the actual like matrix. What I recommend in this case, because I don't believe in putting an exact score from a game into a matrix. I think it's absolutely impossible. I think the people that do it are just making shit up. I'm gonna be
false
frank
precision.
about this. Yes, it's just 3 colors. Yes, no, okay.
Mhm.
Just or even like, God, please no, save me from this.
I'll crush
Okay,
this. Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
like
Just a question: Did you guys
3
use that?
colors is all you need.
Did you guys use that
Legitimate.
at WTC, or was it? Did you guys do pointed matrix as well?
No, we had
We
5.
never did.
We basically
5
had
colors.
5 colors. Like
Okay.
5, 6 colors.
we had 5 major colors, which was like huge win, small win, but every one of those were like basically a bracket between big, small. Like basically, green meant like worst case I get 10, but I can get up to 15 in that matchup. And then you had like dark green, which was a bigger win. But we also had 2 colors that meant that matchup is very swingy, but those colors were meant to be used only if you really know about it, because people tend to overuse it because they feel like,
Yeah.
it's a roll of matchup. It's either 12 for me or 15 for me. Like, bro.
Yeah, if you let your players just put everything as a roll off, they will do that every time.
So speaking of
I
like,
think the
I'm
interesting
gonna
thing that I
override
learned.
Mitch.
Go on, sorry.
Oh, go. No, you go for it. Mitch. Go for it.
Okay,
I was
Mitch,
gonna
go.
say, thank you, Typhus.
He's the boss.
The interesting thing that I learned from last WTC was, so I was running pairings for Team Ice, and that was my primary job, and I took a very quantitative approach to it. And what I found was, with a fair bit of practice, I got very good at winning pairings. If you're on audio, you're not seeing the massive air quotes happening, where I had expected outcomes, and then I paired according to what my matrix said was good and avoided what was bad, and I thought I did a great job. And then, perfect performance, but then inevitably the score would be wildly off. Like, the hard part is not, given a grid, beat the people in pairings. The hard part is the grid needs a ton of context, and also you can't trust it. And that's where all of the challenge comes. So I think you've never done it before. I really like just doing like red, yellow, green, just like make it really easy, because unless you have a lot of practice, the precision is false, and it will give you a better sense of what's going to happen than what actually will happen. And red, yellow, green, for someone who's not done a lot of teams, I think is absolutely really, really smart. I don't know if I'd do it for WTC, but I'd absolutely do it for ITT.
No.
And then just like, you're going to outplay them or you're not, especially since the boards are all the same. And especially if you're focusing on all comers lists, like, actually, I think if it's 5 all comers versus 5 all comers on the board, skill wins, not
to
pairings,
even make it
realistically.
easier. If you are used to playing win, draw, lose, you can kind of translate those matchups that are close, that you are like within 5-10 points from each other, into like a yellow, those that you win comfortably into a green, and those that you usually lose to a red. And that's kind of like where you at. It's a very simplified version, but I think that's a good start.
It works perfectly. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I've started with my local team, as I've said, and most of these guys, even me, had no idea how to prepare, right? We had no time for prepare for every single matchup. We weren't so into that. What you need to understand is the matrix is then primarily the tool for the captain or to the person doing the pairings. It's only use. Like, if you don't like stop thinking of it like, if I don't bring a 12, something bad will happen. Just give me the info. Just give me your honest opinion, feelings, thoughts. I need to do this, and this is the best way to do it. And it works wonders. Like, honestly, I've done that multiple times, multiple tournaments, and have done wonderfully with just 3 color tables.
I would elaborate on that and add that it's not the pairings that win you the games, it's how good your estimations are usually.
It's data.
So it's basically an information game, like everything nowadays. So with that in mind, like I would also add that your estimation matrices are useful not only for the captain, but also for your own team to look at them when you have your own field and say, I don't think I agree with you on that one. And then you just start a conversation and you have players who have different point of view on a specific matchup. Having a prolonged conversation, somebody else might chime in and give their point of view. And it not only validates whether one person was wrong or not, maybe they will end up playing that matchup. So it's also great because they get actual reps. But there's also another thing about it, that more people start to understand what's going on in the brain of a specific player. So you tend to share more and more information with those small discussions.
Okay, I have two big questions. First question, do you account for player skill in the pairings and player personalities at all? Yes, no?
No, never.
Okay. Mitch, no?
Never.
I'm planning to for WTC. Maybe not for ITT, but I'm going to for WTC. Because at the end of the day, I want to know if this person on this list plays this person on this list, on this table, on this mission, what's going to happen. At the end of the day, that's what I want to know, right?
Even more broader than that, because this is a pretty unique event because so many people in the UKTC have history against one another, you know? So me personally, I do take that into consideration. If someone tells me like, look, I've never lost to this guy, I'd be like, mate, go on. like, well, let's continue it, you know, or something like that. But maybe that's just me. I think that's a very singles orientated view of the world as well, right? Like you've got a history.
I think it is, but I think it produces hello. I think it produces like false assumptions, because I think what you always want to expect is your opponent playing a perfect game of 40k and you playing a perfect game of 40k.
Because
this is how you actually figure out a matchup.
For a captain, it's way worse if you underperform that you overperform.
Yep.
Yes.
But it's like a double-edged sword, because if you underestimate everything, then your captain is like, bro, why are you losing everything? Like, what happened?
It's very comfortable to underestimate everything and overperform, which isn't helpful. But I think a lot of players get caught in the trap of actually not realizing, like, okay, this game is like a 12-8 right now. Like, I really need to take my foot off the gas completely and make this like a 6-14, not like a 18-2, which it could become very quickly if I keep playing the game.
And there's also another thing about you guys. As you mentioned, you play a lot between each other. You're like basically in a pod playing those UKTC events. You might have a preconception about playing against a specific player, but you have a preconception based on you playing win, draw, lose.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, the next question I had. And
are you the host here?
Yeah, I'm taking over the show.
Like, bro, you have your own podcast. Come on.
I'm just scouting all the intel.
His training is showing through clearly. Yeah.
I'm the one learning everything here, so this is all good for me. But me personally, I feel like the meta is, in terms of like if you win, draw, lose or 20-0, the score differentials are very close at the moment, because I feel like so many armies are quite powerful and the contention within the top 5 armies is quite close. I don't know what you guys' thoughts on that are, but I feel like at the top tables or playing at the top level, finding those like 15-5s or 16-4s is going to be, in this meta, a lot more difficult. I feel like it's going to be a lot of like 8-12, 10-11-9, around that range. I don't know what your thoughts are as well.
This is my first ITT, so my experience with 5-mans on locked terrain is very limited, but I've done a lot of singles play, and I've done a fair bit of teams play at this point. I think part of what you're seeing, David, is the fact that you're talking about locked tables with smaller teams. Like in an eight player roster, you're going to by necessity have 3 factions, which are probably weaker than a 5-player roster. And then with the ridiculous difference in terrain on WTC board, you can create mismatches and pairings. I think you're likely to see a lot more 20-0s on like a WTC style thing, or 15-5s, than you are 12-8s that you expect to hear. Just because for people who know what they're doing, we've all played on these missions and we've all played on these boards before, like potentially a dozen times or more. Like I just autopilot through deployment on UKTC anymore because I know exactly what I'm going to do. I can almost ignore what they're going to do when I lay down on the board. So like to me, that's why I think what I said earlier, it's going to come down to player skill. I think a lot of the time, because if pairings isn't completely screwed up, you're going to have 5 closest matchups, and who scored more points across 5 games and 1 point wins it. So I do think it'll feel quite different in that way. I mean, we'll see. That's my assumption going in.
100% agreed.
Yeah.
Like overall, I think if we were talking a different event, I think it wouldn't be so difficult to find matchups, like especially on certain tables that you were gonna score big and skew into them. But in here, it's a completely different story, as Mitch said.
Interesting. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Is that it's a set board as well, so there's not as much variance potential to create differentials as well, which is it's interesting. It's you don't really have those like. I think that's a good point in terms of skew lists as well. And I know Pumba, you mentioned this before as well. Like the set terrain makes it so skew lists aren't necessarily as strong because you can't create the situation where you get that skew list into like a gun line on the light board into an army that has a reasonable footprint. Like that's just never going to happen.
I still expect some games to be blowouts, like with the damage output.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still Warhammer, right? People lose big sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes, but like comparatively, especially like I've been judging UKTC for more than a year now, but now after more than a month of playing on it, I still consider those boards to be light overall.
Have you seen mission number 3?
Yes.
Have you played on mission number 3?
Oh yes. I can tell you right now, a Raven Wing Black Knights moving 40 inches don't care about mission number 3.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, that's the one good list on that board.
And they're like, I still overall, like I'm not saying there isn't an army that cannot play on these boards or something like this. Overall, I still consider UKTC to be light terrain in comparison to WTC. And if you are used to WTC and playing that format where fast shooting is king and Harley Quinns were king, for example, here it is only amplified, I feel like. And because of that, there might be situations, I feel like, where you just go first and win big.
Iron Hands going first.
I mean,
especially things like Raven Wing, things like Iron Hands.
That's interesting. I feel like
I've seen.
I mean, it's the argument for the Eons, of course. UKTC.
I mean,
what I would say
we've had this argument before in real life so many times.
Of course. Some of the maps have changed. That they've moved ruins in the deployment zone to be angle better, so stuff like that doesn't happen. But I feel like there is such a big target on places like on armies like Iron Hands, Dark Angels, Guard, and it's like I would be very surprised if people got alphaed by armies like that, like at the X and 1 bracket, for example, right? Especially with the changes to strategic reserves, like that actually slows the game down a lot, in my opinion, and it creates a stalemate for a number of turns. Because if you have strat reserves, realistically, Ironons only have the 1 turn with the pod to really get you out, and it kind of depends on if you go first or second at that point. And a lot of things can happen before, like the Reaper can come, the Gladiator Reaper can come in, the Eradicators can come in, and I feel like armies like that are a lot less alpha-y significantly less alpha-y than we've had in the past.
I don't think I fully agree with the reserves not committing to like a bigger swings. I think I remember plenty of games I've seen in previous versions of the game in this edition that people who placed too much stuff in reserves, etc., which I think was the most common with Sisters when I played against them, just somebody pushed them and they were like, I guess I die.
Oh, yeah. As a classic Sister mistake is to think that reserves is good, at least in Nephilim. I'm not sure about Arcs of Omen, but
that's classic mistake period, I think. Like, and if we are talking strictly like top tables only play, like for this X and 1 bracket stuff like this, it's a kind of a different discussion. But we also need to remember that players play completely differently when going for differentials.
Yeah, it's true.
Like the difference is massive in my opinion. This is literally how everybody in like USA, Germany, or in France, or whatever, or even Australia thought, well, craft worlds are kind of okay, these Harleys, because they tried to win a game instead of tried to win a game by going 20-0. And many of the preconceptions you might have like about certain pairing or a certain matchup might get widely different when playing differentials, either pushing a score to a halt and grinding it down to a very small win, like in 11-9, for example, or it turning things out like pushing everything into you, literally. Oh, so you have 800 points in your reserves. That's very nice. It would be a shame if my whole army just literally rushed you and I went first, because sometimes that happens. And it's you blow out all of a sudden.
It's interesting.
I'll offer my take on how I think this is going to play out, because you asked about offensive skew lists and defensive skew lists, and I think that's come up a bunch. Given that the tables are all identical, a common strategy that we're seeing, especially now in a gunline heavy meta, is your first defender is a heavy shooting list. I don't care what your 2 attackers are. I pick a light board and I just slaughter you. Innes just did this at a tournament up north in the UK where he went like 91 out of 100 points in 5 rounds with Iron Hands every time his first defender. Did exactly that. It's a great trick. Here that doesn't work, because if you put them up as first defender, like, okay, I'll just pick something that can hide behind walls and score, and I neuter your shot at a 20. But I think the only skew that does matter in this context is a good like classic grindy defender list, which is gonna score its points. There's nothing you can do about it. So I throw that into your Iron Hands, and I don't care. You're not getting a 20. I've neutered your biggest thing, and my Iron Hands John is gonna go 20. So I think like, and there's only 2 defenders, right? 5 mans. So I think every good team is going to need one list that is just going to consistently score like 80 something points, no matter what you do. And that's your first defender most of the time, like your generic first defender. And then you just take the most horrible thing off the table that they throw at you and then figure out the rest of it. That, I think, is where you want to see skew in ITT. I'm that, by the way. That's my sisters. I'm going to go take 70, 80 points into the most horrible things imaginable and demand my team buy me beers at the end of the night. We'll see how it goes.
Mitch, can I ask you, how did you approach last WTC? Did you have like a skewing shooting list that took first defender every time?
I don't want to talk badly about my own team, because I love Team Iceland to death, and they're going to friggin' win it this year, and y'all are going to be shocked when we do. But also, last year
Nexus
we didn't have...
shop from Reykjavik.
Team Nexus, 40K. But also, like, I think we didn't have that level of that same level of preparation.
Yeah.
Like, there was a last minute drop. I was asked to play 3 days for list submission. I put together a sisters list, and that was like how it went. So like and that forced like 3 people to switch armies in that last week just to make that work. So there was a lot of churn kind of laid into it. So there was like some challenges on that perspective. We didn't have a non-player at all. So like that made it harder. But like last year we didn't have a like I can shoot and just win on a light board list. We went sisters first defender, which I think a lot of teams did. And I ground out my 8s and my 9s and my 10s all weekend long, and I did my job. And we kind of expected some, you mentioned before, like we had a Craft Worlds list, which is very hard hitting. We had a Tyrannus very hard hitting. And those are the ones that we were banking on scoring 15 plus, and everyone else would kind of hold the line. That was our rough strategy. And it like worked fairly well. But I don't think we do that this time. I think in 8s, we would definitely have that horrible shooting list. And we do. We have Iron Hands and Guard. At least right now we do. So
yeah, the reason I'm actually asking is because even in WTC, we actually approach the things exactly how you described them in 5-mans right now. I think we never defended with a gunline. Like,
exactly.
This guy over here took first defender like 7 out of 6 times or
6
something?
out of 7. Yeah.
6 out of 7 times, and literally just scored like 7 to 8 points every single game, just as a first defender Drukaris.
I did exactly the same.
Belgium,
I was first defender, I think 5 times.
Why did you attack first defender Drukari with sisters? I still don't understand.
It happened, but
we can take him.
It worked out for them. Oh boy, did it work out for him.
It
so-
actually did. Anyway,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's how I think about it. I also think the game is much more coin flippy. Holy crap, can gun lines get output right now than they could 6 months ago, right?
Oh, they really can.
But so okay, I've been wanting to pivot to this point for a while. So
Let's go. Let's go.
gunline.
Uh-oh. I've
Gun-
triggered
oh,
David.
let's
What's gonna
go.
happen?
I like the new host.
This is gonna
though.
be the
I
good-
really like the new host.
Okay, I'm playing guard. So I'm playing guard
Yes.
the ITT. Sure, I'm playing a rounded list. I'm not playing a skew list. In my opinion, guard is by far not even close to the best gun line in the game. I don't think that. I would say on average, guard probably has about 50% of the output that Iron Hands has. It probably has about equal parity with the output of Dark Angels as well. Assuming your opponent doesn't give you a huge Cassock and bomb drop, right? Which no good player is going to give you. That's just my opinion. I don't know if I don't know, and I've certainly been shocked by the flaws that guard has. That's for sure. There are some very difficult parts to work around with guard that has almost zero options into, and I've been deep into the soup tank trying to fix some of these issues. So one big issue with guard is it has almost no melee component to it, and whatever melee component it has is either hamstrung by moving 6 inches and not being able to advance and charge, or moving 12 inches but you're a cavalry model. So, I mean, what are you doing anyway? That's been my experience. They do have obviously shooting output as well, and they can play aggressive. Their secondaries are quite up on par there, but I personally feel like Dark Angels and Iron Hands certainly outclass them in almost every regard. That's just my hot take, but yeah.
But are they not
That
top
is
5?
certainly a hot take. That is.
Are they
They
not
are
top
top 5,
5
I
though?
think. They're top 5,
Yeah.
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 I think guard, guard, you want guard in your top 5 for sure. I'm not saying you don't. I think the big decision points for us. So let's say we only had like realistically 3 people on our team that we could flex the list on. The big decision points for us were like, what version of Space Marines are you going to play? Are you going to play Dark Angels or are you
To
going to play
those
Iron?
listening, I just want to do a quick caveat that's very good to be done at 57th minute. In team setting, you only can have one version of Marines.
Yeah.
So
So
if
yeah,
you're here, I assume you already did know about it, but
yeah, so you can't just play 5 Space Marines, and guard, which would probably be that bad with Alec or something. But are you playing Dark Angels? Are you playing Iron Hands? Kind of what kind of guard list are you playing? Are you playing a skew list? Are you playing a rounded list?
Wait.
And then
Aren't you playing Deathwatch?
not.
It was. You knew it
That's
was
a fair
coming.
point. That's a fair point. Look, I don't think Deathwatch are actually that bad, but I just think they're obviously outclassed by.
But they are the all-rounder list, right?
Well, unfortunately not. Unfortunately, there's armies that are so strong that they are all rounded and still have insane shooting capabilities, such as Iron Hands. But yeah, I mean, it's and then for us, it's kind of like, do you have like a curveball army after that? Which I think personally, a curveball army is pretty scary. I know if I was in a 5-man team and they had a curveball army on a player that was extremely good, I would be really worried because doing pairings into things like that is pretty difficult, especially if you don't have the time to work out, okay, this is actually how, like, this is what they're trying to do. So yeah, no, that's just my hot take. Pumba, I mean, both of you guys, I think all 3 of you guys have said, guard this, but like, what has been your experiences playing with it? I guess it's, it's the newest faction to come out for this tournament, aside from World Eaters, I suppose, but it's definitely got like, it's in the bullseye as far as I can term in terms of what people are thinking about actively and what they're looking at and stuff.
I will answer first on the stats side, just for everyone listening. If you see that guard has kind of low stats coming Arcs of Omen, it's worth mentioning that by low stats, I mean like only 55% win rate for Born Soldiers. It's worth noting that most of the events that are recorded in those datas, in those condensed data, those events didn't allow not original models or proxies. So most of them didn't allow for Leontus and, for example, sometimes didn't allow for Rogaldorns. Not like they are really that good, but like it's something that might have hindered the stats a little bit when we are talking about the army. And the other thing I wanted to say is that any army that, as you mentioned, doesn't have a really good close combat unit and is innately only shooting army has a huge difference in terms of performance when put into really skilled hands. And like above average hands.
For sure.
That
I
was
actually think
my-
Guard are
my-
on that cusp of very difficult to play well.
Yep.
That's just my opinion.
My take about Guard is players are bad. I'm sorry, but
Well,
Guard
it'll be
players
interesting
bad.
because obviously Guard haven't had a top 4 showing last week or something, right? So and I understand that there's newness to the army and everything like that, but at the same time, playing a new army is a big advantage because people haven't played into it. So that should, in theory, elevate your win rate as well. Like that's just a fact. If people haven't had the experience to play games against it, you're at a huge advantage when you're playing your games.
They are hugely. They are absolutely beatable. Like they are nowhere near unbeatable. There are many ways to actually do it. The problem with Guard, I feel like, is they are kind of straightforward, especially in the builds that, in terms of not playing them. Actually, it's not what I mean. If they are easy to play as, your opponent can easily deduce what your game plan is by seeing your list, and I feel like they have been talked about so much right now, especially, and about those couple of like certain units, that everybody kind of knows what to expect coming against the Guard.
Yeah.
You will face Lehman Russes with plasma cannons. You
Yeah.
will face 9 mortars, and you will face Kazirkin bombs that deal 1 billion mortal wounds. That's your 3 main components.
Yeah.
The other important thing to
should.
note here is we keep saying they win, they win, they win. You don't need to. They don't need to, like. It's okay if they win by 1 or 2, right? Like if they win 12-8 and I take them off the table with my sisters because I tie them on primary all game and like I score close-ish on secondaries because theirs are amazing, but mine are bad. Like, okay, great. I just took your big gun off the table that was supposed to score you a 20 or a big score, and like it didn't. So I think that's also another big part of it. In a team's context, it changes the story quite a bit. If they're going to sit back and shoot, okay, fine.
Although their secondaries are absolutely amazing as well.
Oh, yeah. You've got to be able to score 35 from your deployment zone or else you don't take that matchup, right? But like if you can,
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that like obviously inflexible command is an auto 15, which isn't healthy for the game at all. Boots on the ground I find a little bit more difficult to actually apply and maximize. It's actually quite a difficult one to get 15s in. Really, but mind you, I'm playing against like people that we play like a 5-hour game. We play theoretical perfect, and then obviously you've got like banners or R&D as well, which is either an 8 or a 10 on some matchups as well, which is, as Mitch rightly said, a 35. So yeah, it's interesting. I've been a little bit. I don't know if I would personally play Guard in a deep singles tournament, like let's say Coventry, a 3-day was around the corner. Don't know if I'd necessarily play it. There are some parts of the army that are insanely unforgiving as well.
I mean,
I would like to add one more thing about Guard and whatever top army we might be talking about nowadays. Whenever you're talking about Raven Wing, Terminator Briggs, Iron Hands, Guard, whatever you call top nowadays, so GSC included, I think GSC is the least impacted by this. Those armies are very role dependent when playing against each other. So when you mention that one as a team approach, you can imagine that if somebody defends with Guard and you attack them with your Guard and Iron Hands, somebody will get fucked on a who goes first roll. And there's not much you can do about it because your mortars kill his mortars and then he cannot kill your mortars and stuff like that.
No, mate. You put your mortars in your transport. Come on, man. Come on. It's a no-brainer. Come on.
I think we know why you don't rate Guard that highly.
I'm not even joking. Of course you put your mortars in your transport.
They're just blowing up the roof of their transport and confused why no one else is talking.
No, I think the reason the robot drone doesn't have a floor in the actual model is you can fit a mortar in there. I think it fits, so that checks out.
You can, and then you get them out, finial. You don't take the penalty, and then you get them.
Yeah.
I'm not trolling it. That's actually like
no. I know what you mean. I just love shit talking at times. But what I mentioned, like I think GSC is like the more stable in the matchups amongst the top. That's what I'm just trying to say. Like,
which is so weird to say, by the way.
Because of the secondary.
They're
Yeah,
just gonna score, right?
GSC
They can
is
just
the most
they can just
stable.
score.
Holy shit.
They're like the new Necrons, eh?
Necrons can leak their boots, in my opinion.
That's
I mean, like
interesting.
Necrons could like not really kill you, but they would just score 100 points. So
I
get wrecked.
think they are kind of different. Like Necrons could actually win high with you. GSC
Yeah.
is way more stable to actually get small wins. That's like the difference. But what I was just trying to convey is that whenever we talk about those shooty armies matchups, they will tend to be very random.
Interesting.
Gun lines against gun lines is a
A
difficult
clown
thing.
fiesta.
Is a
Interesting.
clown fiesta.
Hmm.
It's also a clown fiesta that you can skew in.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Right,
sure.
list
Yeah, I mean,
submissions
if-
in 4 days, so this advice is irrelevant. But if you could teleport me back, and I was right, I would suggest don't take Iron Hands and Guard necessarily to ITT. I think taking 2 gun lines on fixed terrain in a 5-team thing is asking for it, because you might just run into a comp that like is not that scared of both of them. Like they can solve one and not the other, and then you're not super excited about it. And maybe one of them loses. I would max out at 1. For this
Really?
meta.
But is Iron Hands a gun line?
That's
Exactly.
a good question. It's a good
Let's get
question.
the tornadoes that fly, mate. And they move
As soon as you have like billion speeders and like 15 vanvets, are
That's
you
the
playing
list.
a gun line?
Those
the
guys
problem is
can
that
punch hard.
Yeah, that list is
Oh,
super well rounded, and it's
Yeah.
really tough
That's
as well.
the
I think
thing.
it's pretty much
It-
solved at this point. You know, you're playing
It's
5 speeders.
it's fast,
15
killable board control that kills you the moment you step out behind the wall.
It's very
Yep.
tough. But also in UKTC, it can touch in and see into the windows with the speeders too, which is the tough part. And melters are
And
very
there's
good.
also one thing which is great to again talk 1 hour into the show, and that is on UKTC you can actually block charges, which you cannot do on WTC, which
Yep.
changes a lot of matchups and armies a lot.
Yep.
How
Yep.
they perform.
So,
So
you stand an inch off a wall trick you're describing right now, right? If I stand an inch off the wall, I can't be charged through it. Yeah.
yeah, and
Next,
that doesn't apply at WTC because of the ruling that was also used at LVO for those who are unaware.
It's a
So I
great
haven't played
ruling.
any world eaters. Are they good? Am I worried?
If you can block their charges, I think they are not as good, man.
So wait, a pure combat army that can't charge anything important loses? Is that the advice, Typhus?
What is the viability of playing world eaters?
You see, if you need some knowledge like
Um,
that, you can pay for coaching, right? It's
I'm
surely
gonna be
worth
honest.
your time and
I'm gonna be
money.
honest. I'm just trusting everybody at ITT to have no fucking idea what the world eaters do, and not bring them.
Pumba is taking world eaters. There we go. I've cracked it.
I can 100% tell you I am not bringing them into my team because we've just decided we don't have the capacity, and I'm trusting everybody else to do the exact same thing and just not have the models ready and the time to actually figure them out. And that's my position on the army right now. But I know it
Can I-
scores big.
Can I just go on a mini
on-
rant? I hate mega sword lists like that with like I could 20 half the matrix and lose by 20 to the other half of the matrix. Those things are such a pain in the neck to pair. I hate those lists.
Do you think world leaders are that?
I have no idea. I haven't seen.
think
I
they are
haven't
the
like
exact
gotten experience
opposite.
with them.
Yeah,
You think they're just
I
going to
think they're
score a
the
lot of
exact-
secondaries and be
Yeah.
fine?
I think they
But
are.
I think on
they are your
UKTC
Death Guard. They are your
think-
new sisters.
I think on UKTC they are really comparable to Sisters in the way they play matchups, and they will suffer from the same problems Sisters suffer on those boards.
That they want to stage and then jump you, and if you can get an angle on them, they're going to die. Basically,
I mean,
Yeah.
they are a
Because-
secondaries army.
And Sisters were the same
grab
on
an Arcs
UKTC.
of Omen
Yeah.
book. You can grab an Arcs of Omen book. They have their secondaries there. They are literally scoring for dying on their objectives. So there you go. They will score like a 35 on secondaries.
I think like when we were looking at them, it was you start the game with 62 points, including painting, and then you go
Yeah,
from there.
exactly.
yeah.
I think that's their floor.
Damn.
But you can't throw them up as a first defender, right? Because if they just pin you with 2 really strong shooting lists, I mean, I guess it depends.
On ITT, you can.
Yeah.
I would say you can't. I think they have
Yeah.
too big of a footprint and not enough like super safe staging for ITT.
And you can't take that heavy board. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mention
And
three.
that's at least what I'm hoping for, because I have no fucking idea how to play against them.
I
see.
just want, as a ref, those calls when people get 8 bounded turn 1, and like, why did this one fig boy move 22 inches? Like, can you
I'm
explain?
putting in wait, hold on. I'm putting in a call to my boy. Yeah. Hey, what's up?
Yeah,
How you doing?
yeah.
You good? Yeah. How much money
15
do you got
8
right now?
bounds.
Do you
15
got
of
enough
them.
money? Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna send you an order list. Just make sure you handle that shit. Yeah, spray it 3 colors, and yeah, cool. Thanks, man. I got
15
sorted,
8
man.
bounds. Like 2 rhinos. The new guy. The list writes itself, at least. So that's that.
I never thought I would say it, but that army is as complex in list building as Harleys are.
I think it's less.
List.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
say it. I think it's less complicated.
Come on, you have
writing
like
a Harley's list.
five entries. Like,
I did see 2 different
Exactly.
people of the notable community post 2 lists, and I don't think they knew each other, and it was 25 points difference. Like, it was like the exact same list, and they were like, "Oh, I didn't know this person had the same list as me." I was like, "Mate,
It's
like
not
5
an
minutes."
army, it's a list. Like, I'm not shitting you. It's like how
times.
I mean, my suspicion is they're going to do what Games Workshop often does, and they'll have a phase 2 release at some point with more stuff
Yeah.
to pad it out. Like Sisters did that. The rumors are Votan will get that. I mean, have some faith. Yeah.
in Games
Knights.
Workshop, I always do.
Knights any good? Chaos Knights, Imperial Knights. Obviously, they got swooping options a lot more, but in 5s, they're just not really at the competitive point we can play them.
I think both armies have legs. I think they are.
You have legs. They are knights.
Okay,
He's not wrong.
I'm
He's
out.
not wrong.
I'm fucking out. Thank you for your in-depth knowledge,
There you go.
Mr.
And if you're
what was
asking
it?
why did David Gaylard end ITC in 4th place, it's that
Yeah.
kind of insight that he just
That's
brings
the shit
to
you
it.
need
It's
to
the
know.
insight. It's the know-how. He
Yeah.
just knows. He just knows.
Yeah, I think they have completely different approach, and I don't think their place in top 5 armies is that set compared to 8. I think they have more plays in 8-mans than 5-mans.
So
They're good
on the
brawl.
topic
Like,
of
they're what I found with
They
Knights,
are a risk.
yeah. I feel like Imperial Knights are more of a risk because you want to bring 1 or 2 big boys and then like 6 just little guys, and that is skew, right? If you have 2 big boys, half your army is 48 wounds and 2 models. But like the Chaos list, which is like 12 armigers, that is
And each of them
harder to
has
just
14 wounds. And I want to emphasize one great thing about knights nowadays: they can abuse strategic reserves. And regular knights have it worse than chaos knights because they need to have that one big boy. And chaos
Yep.
knights can have a knight in deep strike, few knights in that come out turn 1 if you want to even. And those are things that are really useful. But at the same time, they have a completely different fighting profile. So
Yep.
some of them are better into other matchups than others. So
one thing we
Chaos
haven't talked
Knights
much.
tend to be better into close combat armies than Knights, basically.
Although I did hear something that I just need to jump into and
Uh-oh.
be a complete ass about. What do you mean bring 2 big knights? to Imperial Knights?
Let people make mistakes.
Brother, not anymore. It's been. When did the codex release exactly? How are people still playing the 2 big knights lists?
I mean,
It's
I
been
see him.
so much.
What do you want from me? What do you want from me?
It's been
I would-
so many months. Stop
would
doing
laugh.
this shit.
I would
Next
laugh,
up, you're
but
gonna bring a desecrator into Chaos Knights.
I would laugh, but I've had some notably close games against House Raven Double Knight list for some reason.
I did.
The one other
I remember it.
the one other really good thing about Chaos Knights, and we haven't talked about this at all, but it's really interesting in 5-mans, is like you do your first pairings, great, you're fusing attacker, but right away for the second pairings, you've got to worry about refused attackers. Like bam, like you're right there. You're making very few choices before you're going to YOLO that last one where the 2 refused attackers play each other. Having Knights as Chaos Knights as one of your second round attackers is nice because if they get refused, they're probably going to be fine into the other guys' refused attackers. Obviously, play out the matrix, but having a few brawlers, which will be fine if they get refused and you get surprised, they don't do what you think they're going to do, and suddenly they're in a weird matchup. It's nice to have a few factions that can do that. And I think Chaos Knights are very good at playing that role on a team. 5 or 8s, but especially 5s.
Like, I'm going to be straight up honest. We thought about bringing Knights. I rate them very highly. I think they are too much of a risk, and that's it. Or I just didn't feel
We mentioned
like
roll-offs. Roll-offs between like the top armies. I think Knights just add another army that tends to bring it over the board for your team composition.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
but I like them a lot. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I like Knights a lot. I would like them to have I think they are a definite possibility. I think they are super good in the meta, which I am very surprised they are, but I think they are really good into the actual meta.
Wow.
Like, I'm not kidding.
I'm just gonna. I won't let you disclose if you're talking Chaos Knights or Imperial Knights, but I'm gonna assume you're talking about Imperial Knights.
Yes, I am talking about.
Okay, and I think because by the way, if you're listening to this and you don't know, Knights can outflank and arrive from reserves on turn 1, right? There's a trait you can take, which is
with the free
huge
blades,
as opposed to previously, right? So that gives you a lot of dynamism to the army that you necessarily didn't have previously, and their secondaries obviously are really solid. Even if you want to tank a loss, you can still get a 9, probably, right? Depending on how much you get tanked and your kind of matchup. Typhus, are you playing in the ITT? You can maybe kick us off with this next question I'm going to ask.
No, I'm a head referee.
Hypothetical, what 5 factions are you bringing if you're submitting tomorrow? I will do the same, and we're all going to do the same. And I will be honest.
I love the new host.
I can
need
be
to work that
all right.
much.
All right, I can be honest as long as this episode airs after the list.
Oh, come on! That was the whole point.
Bro, Josh and Team England are listening. I know I would be listening, bro.
Let's take the
well,
5
list lock is only in like 4 days, so they can't change it now.
Only, Mister.
Have you seen people jump armies to get those sweet
If I had
ITC
4 whole
points
days to print out an army, I would do it.
Okay, Typhus is not playing. Okay, with the exception of Pumba, because some of my lists are already locked in, I will do the same. What I would bring if it was, because I've got 2 people that are already locked in, so it's not represented for me. I don't mind doing it. Typhus, what would you bring for the top 5?
Guard, GSC, Orcs.
ORKS?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a hot take, but that's my hot take. I might be wrong.
I like it.
That's 3 armies. Somebody to be a really boring player, so 50 Terminators.
So good. Yeah. One more. You've got the Space Marine faction to pick. Or
no, I just picked it.
Sure.
I would say it's more of a brain cancer, but like it's still brain cancer in Terminator armor with transhuman. So 5th army, probably Craftwords.
Okay. Mitch, or do you want me to go first?
I mean, I'm going to sidestep you and go back to my original point, which is I think like what we're doing is we're taking factions that we're comfortable with because AOO is still a very uncertain meta, and we're playing factions that we think we can perform well with in that uncertainty. But, you know, there is some flavor to it. So, like, we are taking Iron Hands. We are taking GSC, partly because it's great and it's so different at playing well than everyone else is. Like, it's just such a weird, different type of a list that it's just going to get weird matchups. Also, like, let's be honest, Tom was told that was one of the things he needs to practice. So he's practicing it, which is a factor. We're bringing Sisters, again, because that's what I know how to do very well. And I think I'm just going to go jump on grenades and have a great time doing it. And then we're bringing Grey Knights and Harleys for our last 2. And I think Harleys are still very strong. And Grey Knights are a little bit of a... I think Grey Knights are the other. This person's very familiar with this faction and is going to do relatively well with it. Also, we wanted to take Craft Worlds, but we took Harleys. So stupid team rules.
Yeah. That makes sense. And no, I'm just going to refuse to answer.
And there we go. It's that easy.
I would take for me, a decision point is you take Iron Hands or you take Ravenwing Dark Angels. I feel like the Iron Hands a little bit more flexible. I'd probably go with that. I would take Guard. I would take 300 Termagants, and I would take. No, I'm kidding. Okay, okay. I'll take Guard, Iron Hands. I would take Harlequins. I would take Custodies, which I don't think we've mentioned. I feel like that's potentially a nice curveball there. It's been performing well, and I think can potentially catch some people off guard.
I just think it has awful matchup into Iron Hands and Guard.
That's true, but maybe you can figure that out in the second round of pairings. And I didn't know GSC was as good as apparently both of you thought it was, so I wouldn't have picked that. But I maybe would have gone with maybe like Sisters. I think would have been an interesting one, like some kind of solid defender. But yeah, maybe that's probably what I would go with personally. Pumba. Now I know you don't have to say, but
I can lay
no, it's fine.
Like, do you want me to give you what I would bring as my perfect 5 or what I'm actually bringing? They are close to each other, but they are not the same.
No.
Go with perfect 5.
Wait.
Yeah.
Is there a faction that we haven't between the three of us? Are there any factions that we haven't mentioned that are actually kind of top of mind for you right now?
No, I think they would be all in.
We kind of covered
for my top 5. For my top 5, I think we've covered it.
Okay, so you don't have to answer because I understand more than anyone that.
No. I'm really fine. I'm just trolling. Like,
See,
I
got
can. No. It's completely fine. Like, it's 4 days. I was just joking around. I would bring. I'm actually in the camp of 45 Deathwing Terminators with support is just a brain cancer, and I would play that if I had that list for WTC as I had my 36 beloved warriors, I would play that. But I would rather enjoy my life if I still have it. So I just don't think I would bring that, and I'm not bringing that just because I don't want to enjoy the event. But that I think that list is just horrendous in teams. It's such a cock block that it's hard to figure out an answer for. Harleys for me, Guard definitely in GSC. Super in actually GSC number 1 spot.
Wow.
And the last one is the
Tier B boys. Let's all remember.
So you've mentioned Typhus mentioned orcs, you've mentioned custodes.
But wait, can I interrupt?
One thing craftwords.
One thing we should have mentioned that I actually just realized would have been my 5th actually instead of Sisters. I would play Tau probably.
Nope, can't take it back. Sisters are better.
With I would play 2 Sunshark Bombers, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say that the factions which I'm surprised no one mentioned are Tau and Demons. I think Demons.
I was going to say
like 70 Slanesh. What are they called? Little guys, Demonettes.
Yeah,
those don't die that fast,
and
they are all over you in one turn.
We're all in the same online circles, clearly, because this list has. I've yet to see this list actually do well. I'm just going to put it out there, but a lot of things.
But I have seen the list.
I mean, Hader, who's the team captain for Iceland, got second best demons in the world and took them to LVO. So I might be a little bit slanted in my opinion, but I've seen him do some very impressive things with that.
No, none of us is biased. We are perfectly objective.
Yeah.
That's why we have completely different opinions about which armies are the best.
Yeah. I think a closing note for me would be that there's obviously, even between the 4 of us for 5s, there's obviously like a ton of viable factions. Like, I don't think anything that we mentioned here was going to be like severely deplete your chances of actually winning the entire tournament. Like, if you picked,
as I said, I would have picked. I could easily go with Knights, for example.
Exactly right, or something else, that we
could see Chaos Knights as well.
Yep, no problem.
Yeah, which is I think a really exciting part meta to be in. It's like super unsolved. Teams with 5s on UKTC with all the same board is really interesting because for me it becomes a lot about the sequencing of the missions and thinking about missions 4, 5, and 6. Like, what is your team composition going to look like to perform well on those missions? Because those are evidently where you would most likely play a team where you're going to lose if you're a top competing team. So seems real positive to me. I can't wait to see you guys next week. Well, not this weekend, but the weekend after as well.
Yeah, I would add that it will be way more interesting when we will look after ITT into the Netherlands 8 months.
Yeah.
If we analyze, I will try to get one episode after the list submission to actually analyze what different teams took, because I think it will be very, very interesting how I still expect the meta to be unsolved by then in 8 months.
I agree.
I really expect it to be unsolved and different teams taking different things. But like I can see David was trying his hardest to close it out and actually go to sleep and
He has
work tomorrow.
has the host mentality. You can't take it away.
Yeah, like I will think twice next time when I ask Vic who should be the guy from you two, and I will just take Vic because that soothing voice will not interrupt and will not take over. So
You think that?
Welcome.
I will learn it at one point. That's what I expect.
Typhus, did I do good that I only said the words "This is a battle" 462 times on this show? Because I think I did really
I
good.
expected 5 more.
I'll work on that next time. I apologize. I acknowledge my failing. We'll correct it.
But like on the closing notes, quick 2 questions. Mitch, what are your favorites going into this tournament?
Obviously, Team Oxford is going to win the whole damn thing. What are you talking about? Problem solved.
Okay.
I mean, I think one of the national teams is my favorites. Like, I look at like mini Poland or mini England, or maybe these dice down guys. Like, I think that honestly, mini Poland, mini England are my takers to win. They have the team mentality, they've got the talent, they've got the reps as a team. Is what I would guess.
And David, who's your dark horse?
Oh, dark horse. The problem is I don't know any of the other teams, but I'm going to take the other same question, and I think Team England have on paper, strictly speaking on paper, I think everyone here would agree Team England have the most decorated team and very scary player skill. Everyone on that team I would be scared to play. Maybe Chris Kenner, because I don't think I've played him before, but I think on paper they've got the scariest team. I think after WTC they'll be in a bit more of the try hard camp in terms of preparing and what like that. And I think this will be a good preparing tournament for them. So I think I would go Team England, closely followed by Team Poland, and then I think my team is fighting for potentially taking a win off Team Poland or Team England on a good day, and kind of coming in third and beating the rest of the teams sort of around, and having to try hard against a couple of the other teams like Team Tryhard and Vanguard Tactics, who I'm assuming have a team there as well, and like War Masters. So I think we'll probably come out the top of the pack of those, but I think we'll be behind the national teams as well.
Should I give my answer? Like, we are taking it away from home.
Hell yeah!
Let's go, baby.
It is going away from home, is what I'm gonna say. Although I'm gonna be super honest. Like, I think that just the sheer amount of prep and play that teams like Dice Down or Team England have gotten onto UKTC boards is massive. The fact that we are jumping into completely different system on a completely different terrain with completely different set of rules is gonna be a tough thing to jump through. It's gonna be very difficult for us to adapt to that in such a short amount of time.
I think Pumba,
but I also think that we are able to.
Yeah,
it's gonna be difficult, but I think
people are gonna get mice-oned. That's what you were saying.
I
it
am
hurts.
really hoping
it
they
hurts.
will. I really am hoping they will.
Yeah, I think we're lucky in that our team has got a wealth of experience, probably more than Team England at that point, because a lot of them played teams as well. We're probably the most experienced players on the board, on the boards on the tournament. But it's not to be understated that not playing the terrain sets and even the venues and the players and whatnot like that, and the mission packs, not playing that on a daily basis does have a big disadvantage. And of course, a lot of us guys experience that when we go to LVO, not playing that format, the tournament format, the terrain format, everything like that. Is you do feel like you're on the back foot and you really know it. But I have no doubt that you guys are putting in the effort. I bet you've got people playing literally right now.
Let me check. I'm gonna quick.
I think there's one game going on right now.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly.
Yes, there is.
One of my favorite all-time episodes of Mythbusters, which was one of the greatest TV shows ever made, was when they were trying to figure out if you could like swim in Jello, like how fast you could swim in Jello instead of like water. And they got like an Olympic athlete to like do the test. And they ended up throwing the test away because the Olympic athlete was so perfectly trained to swim in water that like trying to put him in a different context made him terrible. And in fact, he like underperformed compared to like the hosts of the show who were just like guys who could swim because they just like were more okay with the switchover. The reason I say this is like the players who are like some of the best singles players in the world does not necessarily translate over to teams. Like and thinking differently about losing small or when do you take your foot off the gas is like a whole skill set. Now, granted, obviously, Daly, you're a phenomenal player, but there is like a lot to that different context, which I think more teams-oriented players will naturally intuit to and close that skill gap a little bit. So, you know, Team Poland all the way, baby. You can be right behind Team Oxford in second place. I will allow it.
I will take that. I will take that very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Do you want to do some plugs before you go? I know one of you might want, like the host.
Well, Mitch hosts the Sisters podcast, which is extremely good podcast. If you play Sisters, you need to go and check out the podcast as well. Is that
wait? Are we inverse plugging? Is that what this is?
No, I mean, I love, you know, Mitch is.
Have you mentioned the name of the podcast though?
Yeah, it's the Sisters podcast, right?
It's called Sister Act 40K. Whoopi Goldberg has yet to sue us. You'll need the 40K or you'll just get Whoopi Goldberg content. So Sister Act 40K, and that's how you find us. And David Gaylard co-hosts an episode called 40K Fireside where you can listen to him and Vic like talk about stuff. They're both really good players and they have good insights. So you should listen to them too.
There we go.
I'm liking this inverse plug. It's fun.
Pumba, have you got, you must be attached to something, are you? Or did Team Poland have something?
We don't have anything going on in English because apparently we don't have enough content capabilities, let's say, and time is the research that we are lacking. But I'm gonna plug the Contact Lost podcasts, which are our good friends that have hosted us multiple times and are absolute champions of the Polish community overall, and they are sharing what's going on in Polish 40K all the time. So I'm going to shout them out because they are amazing.
On a closing note, thank you guys for joining in. This was episode, I don't know which number. I don't really enumerate those, but like Enter the Matrix, part of the Stat Check network. It's a bonus content that's not a regular content, as you can tell from the name. I'm great at pitching those things. And if you like it, consider subscribing to us, going to Patreon, you know, giving some comments because those YouTube algos are weird and no one wants to get trapped by them. I think we didn't swear enough to get demonetized, so I'm really proud of you guys.
Now I'm kind of disappointed.
There's no inus
like I
to
didn't
really
do my job.
Yeah.
I don't think YouTube algo will actually catch Ines swearing. Like,
I have no idea what he's saying.
Yeah, like YouTube algo will not do that. So on that note, enjoy until the next one.